Welcome back to another episode of Flawless Plan Garage, where today we're going to be working on this, my Locost 7 scratch-built sports car, sort of in the vein of a Lotus Super 7. And I mean sort of, heavily on the sort of. But first, I've got to talk to you about today's sponsor, people who think their cars handle like go-karts. Those people are wrong. This is a go-kart. So, as you might remember from last time, we rebuilt the transmission, and the transmission rebuild seemed to work pretty well. But then the engine, not so much after that. I've got a track day coming up. I would like to get this thing fixed quickly if possible and take it out to the track. I have my suspicions. I have had fuel injector failures before on this car, and it's obviously, I think it's obvious, something fuel related, just cutting out and running terribly. We don't have fancy electronics in this thing to give us like check engine lights and other sorts of modern conveniences. So just kind of going by feel, but it feels like something's off with the fuel delivery. So we're going to check out the injectors first. Okay, tour of the spark plugs. Number 1, sooty with no burn mark. Number 2, pretty decent with a nice burn pattern on it. Number 3, decent with a nice burn pattern on the electrode. Number 4, suspiciously clean. This is not something you want to see. So with the plugs out, join me on our little diagnostic journey. I'm going to try this the first time on camera. I'm pulling the fuel pump fuse so it won't pump when I crank it. Yeah, did not hear the fuel pump, which is good. Now we're going to watch while I crank it over. Okay, this time I'm going to take it out of gear. Now we're going to watch while I crank it over. I assume you could see that spraying out. So take a look at what happens in cylinder number 4 if I turn the key on and build fuel pressure even without, cranking or firing the injector. I don't know if you can see that. Let's try it again. You might be able to hear it even if you can't see it, and I can see it from here, a little better angle than what I can get with the camera. It's filling with fuel. In cylinder 4, that injector is just spraying fuel as soon as it's pressurized. So even without having pressure in the rail, or I should say without having the pump active, it was still enough pressure to shoot fuel into that cylinder. I've turned off, I pulled the fuse on the fuel pump now, but we'll crank it again and we should see fuel vapor shooting out. Yeah, that's not vapor. That's liquid fuel now dripping down off the ceiling. That put out quite a bit that time. Yeah, good stuff. Good times. So, on the plus side, I really just might need fuel injector. Overall, not too impressed with the way these have held up. These are Bosch 550cc EV14 injectors. I had one fail and leak externally last year. I think now I've got one failed and leaking internally. So, might just buy a whole new set, swap these out. Overall, this is a new one on me. I've never seen so much fuel in a cylinder that rather than, carboning up or burning kind of black and rich, that instead it steam cleans it almost like I would normally see with a head gasket leak burning coolant. But absent a good leak down test to verify the cooling system, there we are. I think I've got some pretty obvious evidence that that injector is just hosing fuel down into that cylinder. So I replaced the fuel injectors, even though they were less than a year old and only had a few hundred miles on them and were rated for E85. Apparently, my best guess is that the E85 killed them, or some other kind of internal failure. So with a new set of Bosch 550cc injectors, I took the car out to track day out at Hastings, at the Motorsports Park Hastings, and the car did okay. It was definitely down on power, and while there are several other issues the car has on the track, it was clear, compared to previous track days I've done on this car, it just didn't have something. It was really struggling to accelerate at all in the higher gears. That being said, even significantly down on power, having trouble turning in at speed, all the aero issues that are inherent to this car currently, it was still by far a personal best for me at this track. I think I was down in the 145 range compared to like 150 that I used to run in my air-cooled 911, and I'm usually about 158-ish on a good day in the Corvair. Nevertheless, it was pretty apparent that some more investigative work was due to see what exactly and how badly this engine is really hurt. So let's do that, and let's start with a leak down test. Now to find TDC, I like to use this wooden dowel down the spark plug hole, and then just turn the motor by hand. With the wooden dowel I can feel the piston coming up, and there's almost no risk of me scratching or damaging anything in the cylinder. That's about it right there. Cylinder 2. Then when I'm actually doing the leak down test, especially on a small, low friction 4-cylinder like this, I find it's pretty easy for the air pressure from the leak down tester to actually push the piston back down in the bore. So I like to hold it, hold the crank pulley with a breaker bar. Yeah, this is kind of what I had expected. So I had seen this issue last year after the fuel injector had failed. That is, 90 psi going in, but only 40 psi holding in the cylinder in number 3. So number 3 has a lot of leak down. Like maybe 60% leak down, something like that. Not great. Probably not making all the power it should. And here's number 4. Pretty similar to number 3. 4 was the one that also had a failed fuel injector and was hosing fuel in. And yeah, that's not great. And it's not quite. Number 3 was down around 40 psi holding. This one's 46 psi, but losing a lot of compression on number 4. And here's number 2. So 90 in, 75, 74, 75 out. Not good. Better than the other 2, but we got a pretty sad state of affairs here. We have one engine, or one cylinder with good leak down, and 3 not so much. Let's see where this is coming from. Yeah, you could hear that a little bit again there. A little puff of air pressure. So apparently, and not a huge surprise, the engine is pretty hurt. So from here I guess I have a few options. Could rebuild it, maybe try to pull the head off, have the head tested, maybe just have the head rebuilt if that's where the problem lies. Maybe just replace the whole engine. Not quite sure yet. But I would like to have this thing going again, so we'll get to that pretty soon. Thanks for watching. See you next time.